Hello everyone, my name is Brian McConnell. I did my research paper on outsourcing the function of internal cybersecurity. The title of my research is Cybersecurity, Threats and Outsourcing in a Digital World. And with that, we'll get right into it. So recently there's been a great deal of research, academic, corporate, governmental, that's been dedicated to the effects of cybersecurity lapses and the effects that breaches have on corporate information systems. As the level and frequency of these attacks increase, so has the attention paid to the subject, leading research firms to determine the causes and effects of these attacks. Less research, unfortunately, has been paid to the methods in which companies, using limited resources, are working to ensure that their security of their networks. A multitude of factors in the cybersecurity realm are forcing companies to look at outsourcing as part of their internal security responsibility. I argue that outsourcing at least some parts of companies' cybersecurity to outside firms is a viable option. I look at the drivers behind outsourcing cybersecurity, including cost, time, knowledge, and equipment. Further, I will use a pros and cons analysis for companies of all sizes to help weigh the benefits and detriments of cybersecurity outsourcing. Next, risks associated with outsourcing and ways to mitigate those risks are investigated and discussed. Throughout the paper, real-world examples are given and quotes from industry leaders are provided. This research will assist decision makers that outsourcing part or all of their cybersecurity is a viable and effective option. There's been a steady march of companies digitizing aspects of their business, and it's continued unabated since the computer revolution became mainstream in the 1980s. Over the past few decades, we have seen human resources, finance, sales, customer service, and administrative functions all move from pen and paper stored in office filing cabinets onto increasingly sophisticated computer networks that are oftentimes connected to the internet. As soon as companies connect their computers and networks to the internet, they become potentially accessible from any other computer on the planet. As computer networks proliferate and companies, individuals, and governments embrace an interconnected digital world, certain new realities must be faced. A major threat facing virtually every company in the modern world is the security of their digital networks. Breaches that have a material impact on businesses' digital networks have been increasing in size and in scale. Corporate CIOs are on the front lines fighting a firestorm of cybersecurity threats attempting to engulf their companies. At some point in a business's life, a question must be asked and answered. How should cybersecurity be handled? This paper will take a narrower look and focus on the question, should companies outsource their IT cybersecurity? It's a question facing more and more companies as the speed and velocity of cybersecurity threats continues to accelerate. Now I'd just like to take a moment to briefly go over cybersecurity and outsourcing. So what does it mean to outsource cybersecurity? What is cybersecurity? Cybersecurity is defined as the body of technologies, processes, and practices designed to protect networks, computers, programs, and data from attack, damage, or unauthorized access. The elements of cybersecurity include application security, information security, network security, disaster recovery, and user education. Shifting the responsibility to an outside company of one or more of these elements would constitute cybersecurity outsourcing. Now, in the face of growing threats to cybersecurity, a majority of large companies have not yet fully embraced outsourcing their security functions. According to a recent survey by the Corporate IT Forum, only 5% of respondents had outsourced cybersecurity, and 48% said they would not outsource their security teams. Of the 5% that did outsource, 29% moved only a few elements of cybersecurity, opting to maintain some of those functions in-house. The reluctance by some companies to outsource could be rooted in the idea that at the end of the day, it's ultimately the company's problem if a malicious breach does occur. This is the opinion of Deloitte's Adele Melick, who in an interview by the Economic Times had the following to say when asked about cybersecurity. Now I'm quoting him here. "I would say getting the support is essential, but at the end of the day, this is something an organization has to own. I am one of the people who do not believe in outsourcing security. You can outsource some of the operations, but you cannot not outsource your obligations." End quote. So the decision to outsource cybersecurity undergoes a very similar process as when deciding to outsource other functions within the business. As in all forms of outsourcing, these decisions are made at a micro level. Companies must first look at whether outsourcing is the most appropriate choice for their business, regardless of what the others in the industry are doing. The decision of whether or not to outsource is a vital one. If a company does decide to outsource, the process of provider selection begins. Providers can include those within the business's home country or offshoring to foreign countries. Regardless of which is chosen, core capabilities should be considered, including client-specific capabilities, process capabilities, and human resource capabilities. After a provider has been selected, legal issues such as contract negotiations, SLA agreements are formally agreed upon. Finally, maintaining a relationship with the provider through a combination of communication and governance is required for a successful outsourcing strategy. One of the primary drivers for outsourcing cybersecurity is cost. Having experienced IT staff with all the necessary tools to ensure network safety can be an expensive line item for companies. Another is monitoring. 24/7 monitoring of a computer network is an essential part of early detection and prevention of serious breaches. In addition, compliance requirements in certain industries like financial and medical mandate that a certain level of security standards are being adhered to. Small, medium, and large companies alike need to take stock on where their cybersecurity stands and what needs to be done to ensure their networks are secure. In many companies, the senior executives unwittingly believe their companies are safe from cyber attack and leave the task to network security to their IT departments and their CIOs. Some companies decide the best way to ensure their security is to outsource, potentially offshoring that task to outside companies that are better equipped to handle the ever-evolving threat. So I want to briefly look at a Chief Information Security Officer's budget and highlight a few points. The cost of maintaining a staff and technology with the adequate capabilities can fill a significant percentage of a corporate CISO's budget. A quote from a leading CISO: "Staffing makes up an average of nearly 50% of most IT security budgets. The difficulty is finding and hiring skilled staff." We can see also that the capital expenditures in this budget for new technology is 21%, and the training and development fills up another 3%. So now I'd like to get into the pros of outsourcing information security function. In an attempt to rein in staffing, training, capital expenses, and other budgetary costs related to cybersecurity, companies can outsource one or more of those elements. Outsourcing of cybersecurity has, in some cases, resulted in a direct savings of up to 30%. The reductions in costs can free up funds to invest in critical IT projects or future planning. In addition, IT staff can focus their attention, who were focusing their attention on security, can now be retasks, reduced in numbers, or potentially, maybe unfortunately, eliminated to further reduce costs. An example provided by a Texas hospital, the CIO was able to quickly reduce his technology expenditures by $1 million by outsourcing the detection element of his cybersecurity to a local contractor. The name of this contractor was Alert Logic. A direct quote from the CIO sums up his decision. The quote is, "We worked hard to find ways to save money. We settled on outsourcing our intrusion detection needs to Alert Logic rather than continuing to manage them in-house." End quote. By outsourcing cybersecurity, you are gaining access to technology and experience you may not have had access to by keeping that function in-house. Every CIO and IT department concerned with his or her network security knows that Cybersecurity is not a Monday through Friday 9 to 5 task. Ensuring your network is safe requires remaining vigilant and monitoring detection and alerts 24/7. There is no such thing as taking a break from security because threats can materialize at any time and originate from anywhere in the world. While many security tasks can be automated to increase coverage, the need for trained IT professionals is still required. Small businesses often believe that they are not at risk because their logical conclusion is that who would bother hacking my system when there are much larger targets out there? That rationale no longer applies, as a quote from Paul Judge, Chief Research Office for Barracuda Network highlights. He's quoted as saying, "It used to be that some businesses were small enough to not matter to attackers, but with the volume of attacks and the automation levels of attacks, any business that is connected online needs to be prepared with the proper security measures." End quote. Maintaining the around-the-clock monitoring is difficult for large companies and nearly impossible for small to medium-sized businesses without using some form of outsourcing services. Recently, the United States federal government has shown their support for the idea of outsourcing cybersecurity with the Department of Homeland Security is partnering with private firms to help with cybersecurity threat detection. The program, called Continuous Detection and Monitoring, or as they say, CDM, the program will enable federal agencies to work with the Department of Homeland Security through private vendors to better enhance threat detection and intercept. The fact that the federal government of the United States has entrusted part of the cybersecurity of the country to an outside vendor is a show of support for cybersecurity outsourcing model. So now I'd like to talk about some of the cons of outsourcing the information security function. Outsourcing the cybersecurity also comes with potential downsides. A downside often cited is a loss of control over critical components of information technology. By outsourcing cybersecurity, you're allowing an outside company to oversee the critical infrastructure and intellectual property of your business. This loss of control can be a big hurdle to overcome for a company's choice of whether or not to outsource. Detailed SLAs help to define the responsibilities of the provider, but the internal goals of the company may not always be aligned with the security provider's methods. This can lead to a breakdown in the relationship and/or a breakdown in communication. In addition, there is a risk of dependency that is intertwined with the potential for losing control of one's own security. By outsourcing cybersecurity, a company may lose visibility into how data is stored, transmitted, and accessed. This lack of visibility can leave a company relying on a vendor to perform the tasks necessary for security. This essentially means a company would need to be given access to their own systems through their vendor. If the proper safeguards are not put in place or provider becomes unresponsive, there is potential of being locked out of access to your data or vital systems. A company can outsource the function of cybersecurity to a provider, but the risk and responsibility still remains with that company. In the event of a breach or loss of data, the company ultimately bears the responsibility to their customers, clients, etc. Outsourcing vendors know that securing a system 100% is an incredibly difficult undertaking, and they have sought to limit their liability. The following are recent trends in cybersecurity outsourcing their liability. 1. Providers are looking to significantly limit their liability. 2. Their damage to brand and reputation can far exceed the compensation. 3. Clients are pushing for more specificity in security processes operated by their service provider. I'm now going to talk about some of the threats and risks associated with outsourcing cybersecurity, some of which do overlap with the cons. If a company decides that outsourcing cybersecurity is in their best interest, then the important process of vendor selection begins. Choosing the best vendor for a function as critical as cybersecurity is immensely important. There are several core capabilities that companies should consider when selecting a vendor. These capabilities include leadership, business management, technology exploitation, organizational design, and governance. Since you'll be entrusting all or part of your cybersecurity to an outside vendor, the risks associated with selection are critical to the success of your outsourcing plan. As mentioned in the cons section of this presentation, the risks for disruption in your business can be significant. The quality of service provided can determine the level of security of your company's networks. There are significant loss of control risks associated with outsourcing all or part of your company's cybersecurity. Outsourcing responsibility for cybersecurity limits the ability to choose technology, processes, and safeguards internally. Also, the decisions the outside company make may or not be in line with your internal plans or goals. You're essentially at arm's length from your own cybersecurity decision making. Again, this means a potential reduction in the visibility to your access and transmitted data. Also, the end of an outsourcing agreement could happen for any number of reasons. Discontinuing the relationship with a cybersecurity outsourcing partner could potentially be a cumbersome and painful process. It's in the vendor's best interest to keep the relationship going as long as possible to continue generating income. Vendors may also enhance their stickiness by trying to take over as many cybersecurity functions as possible, thereby making it more difficult to relationship. Since changes in business environments may require changes in your security structure, becoming locked into an agreement with a vendor may have a negative effect on your ability to quickly or adequately react. The provider is obligated to make sure the transition to your new vendor or back in-house is as seamless as possible, but this may not always be the case. Now I'd like to talk about mitigating some of the risks to outsourcing cybersecurity. Again, the selection of a vendor for outsourcing your cybersecurity is critically important. An important part of the selection process is agreeing to the framework of the relationship and the SLA. To help manage the risk, very specific SLAs and robust management processes need to be put in place. Built in the SLA should be governance and regular communication between the companies to ensure a smooth relationship. In addition, the metrics for what is required to ensure robust cybersecurity should be established. These metrics could include things like virtual machine availability, response times, network latency, etc. When a partnership between a company and its cybersecurity outsourcing provider has good communication and proper governance controls in place, then loss of control becomes less of an issue. Ongoing status reviews can mitigate the risk of loss of control as well. These reviews should include all the relevant parts of the business to help ensure the access to required systems is continual for internal IT staff. The best time to think about a potential end of an outsourcing partnership is at the beginning. There should be little guesswork entailed with what happens when the relationship comes to its eventual end. There should be clearly laid out responsibilities for the vendors that should be written into the SLA and contract during the negotiation phase of the partnership. For example, exit clauses ensure the contract addresses the following topics at the discontinuation of the partnership: provider responsibilities, client responsibilities, the client's right to recover its data, legal implications of termination for clause including arbitration options, and termination fees. There are numerous companies that provide outsourcing cybersecurity, and that list continues to grow as the market for such services increases. The technology research and consulting firm Gartner predicts 2015 security spending to increase 8.2% over 2014 to reach $76.9 billion. Gartner also believes that by 2018, more than half of organizations will use security service firms that specialize in data protection, security risk management, and information security management to enhance their security posture. Established IT companies, as well as relative newcomers to the industry, are leading the way in offering cybersecurity products and services. Some of the leading companies include well-known IBM, Hewlett-Packard, and a relatively new company, Palo Alto Networks. So in conclusion, the cybersecurity of a company's computer networks is fundamentally important to its ability to operate in the modern world. Research on the subject of cybersecurity is extensive and thorough. Research on outsourcing cybersecurity is somewhat scattered and disjointed. Further research on the topic of outsourcing cybersecurity is warranted. I believe the decisions facing companies regarding their cybersecurity will increase both in complexity and in the time constraints they must be made in. The findings in this paper and presentation can be used as actionable steps for those decision makers looking at their options. That is the conclusion of the presentation. I want to apologize to everyone for going a little bit over, and I really enjoyed, even though I didn't physically meet anyone in the class this semester, enjoyed working with everyone this year. And my references are here.